Okay, we'll get started. Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Dunn Herrera. I'm the Assistant Director of Health Promotion at the Healthy Capital District of New York. Welcome to everyone. We are so grateful for your attendance and thrilled to be able to offer this fantastic professional development series focused on integrating and supporting the certified Medicaid reimbursable peer. Today's kickoff event hones in on the why and the why now of employing peers. We hope that you had a chance to review the news flashes and email with some of the research and data behind this tremendously effective, evidence-based, life-saving workforce. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask that you introduce yourselves and your agency and provide contact information in the chat. Also include whether you are requesting CECs and for what certification and for license. To get those CECs, you will need to remain for the duration of the presentation. Also, if you are not currently subscribed to our quarterly news flash, please put that in the chat as well, and I'll add you to that distribution list. Now, just a few quick housekeeping items: materials, resources, a 3-question survey, along with a complete list of any questions and answers from today will be sent out following the presentation. You could expect that probably at the end of next week. Throughout the presentation, we hope that you do have questions and that they do pop up. Please put them in the chat as they come up for you. And then at the end of the presentation, we will get to as many as we can. And like I mentioned, all of the questions along with the answers will be included in the email that we send out. Now, we could not have held this event without our terrific collaboration with SAMHSA/ORN and ASAP New York, and also without our wonderful partnership with For New York. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our partner, colleague, incredible advocate, and superwoman, Theresa Noor from For New York. Theresa?
Thank you, Carrie. So I think I see a lot of familiar faces on this call, but I do want to do just a tiny little bit of a dog and pony show for those who do not know who For New York is. So For New York is Friends of Recovery New York. We are the statewide recovery community organization. So there are local recovery community organizations all throughout the state. We are that connecting tissue between all of those local RCOs. We also do education and training and advocacy on a statewide level. I will put our website in the chat for those who are not familiar with us. Lots of resources for the recovery community that exist in that website. At some point, I will do a whole For New York 101. But right now, I just want to introduce our speaker for the day, which is the ever fabulous colleague, friend, super trainer, recovery coach, Ms. Ruth Riddick from ASAP NYCB, Community Outreach and Communications Extraordinaire. Over to you, Ms. Ruth.
Well, thank you, Theresa. And what a pleasure it is to be here this afternoon. We're doing something today thanks to Carrie's vision. We're doing something today, kicking off a series, which I hope will be a really valuable intervention into our field to help us to expand our understanding, elevate our practices, and generally speaking, just grow our field beyond our wildest dreams. Our shared mission here today is recovery. What's it all about? Recovery! And Carrie is bringing us an opportunity to go deeper with how we all connect with that shared mission. But we couldn't do it without our sponsors. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce folks to Emily Santiago, who is a wonderful partner from the Opioid Response Network. Emily really has a grasp of detail and one of the best organizers it's been my pleasure to work with. Emily, would you like to say a few words of welcome, and then I will launch into messages from our sponsor.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Ruth. My name is Emily Santiago. I am the Assistant Project Director for the New York and New Jersey region of the Opioid Response Network, along with my colleague, Katie Cunningham, who is also on in this training as well. So it's lovely seeing all of you here, and we're really, really happy to partner with Carrie, with Ruth, and with Theresa, and we really hope that you enjoy the training, and I will stop there so that Ruth can get to the reason why we are all here today.
Thanks so much, Emily. So I promised that we would take some messages from our sponsor, and here we are. This is what we're doing today. We're talking about integrating peer recovery professionals. I like to talk about value. I like to talk about the value proposition of what we're doing. And we'll talk a bit about our purpose, and we'll talk a bit about management. And that's who I am, and this is today's date, but we wouldn't be here but for the sponsorship of the Opioid Response Network, and that's thank you, Emily. And what is ORN, and how do they connect with us? ORN works with communities to address the opioid crisis. Very simple mission there. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration State Targeted Response Technical Assistance and State Opioid Response Technical Assistance grants money created the Opioid Response Network to assist states like us here in NYS, individuals and other organizations like everybody here this afternoon, by providing the resources and technical assistance they need locally here in New York State to address the opioid crisis. Technical assistance is available to support the evidence-based prevention, treatment, and recovery of our communities. And it's my honor to serve as a peer recovery subject matter expert to ORN. Emily tells us, or ORN tells us, that Emily provides us with experienced consultants in prevention, treatment, and recovery to communities and organizations to address the opioid crisis. ORN accepts requests for education and training, and each state or territory has a designated team. Emily has been very clear with me that ORN is focused on implementing evidence-based practices. And I think I speak for everyone in the room, Emily, when I say we're all committed to the best practices in our field. And we're thrilled to know about you, to have you on board, to have your sponsorship of this series. To contact Emily or to connect with the Opioid Response Network, here are the coordinates. orn@aaap.org. Messages from our sponsor. So what has our sponsor underwritten for us today? What is Carrie's vision? And that led her to partner with Theresa at Friends of Recovery, New York. Here is the full program, the full series of events that Carrie has planned for us over the coming months into the end of September. And a very detailed program this is too. My purpose today is really to provide an overview of what we're talking about when we talk about peers. Because this program over the coming weeks will delve deeper into just about every aspect of what I'm about to say. And I expect that some of the references that I quote this afternoon will come back in future presentations where they will be presented again in very much greater detail with more room or opportunity to consider more deeply. So essentially my role here today is to set us up with this series, with this program. And I do that from the perspective of a key stakeholder in New York State, which is ASAP New York Certification Board. That's the double header logo you see behind me and you see on these slides. The New York Certification Board at ASAP, where we're a department of ASAP, we have been certifying peer recovery professionals in New York State for 10 years. So we bring you a lot of story and a lot of backstory and a lot of experience to where the professional piece of talking about the peer recovery profession, where the profession piece comes in, and very specifically where professional training and certification, how that adds value to what you're all doing out in the field. And here we are, the New York Certification Board at ASAP. These lovely folks you see over on the right-hand side of this slide is the 2022-2023 just incoming board at New York Certification Board. And these are the people who set policy for certification in New York State. And these are the folks who review certification applications. Each and every one of them promises me that they are not open to bribery and corruption, that everybody who is certified in New York State, we all got it straight. And that's one of those excellent standards that over here on the left-hand side, our executive director, John Coppola, insists on. John has been with ASAP since the beginning in the mid-90s. And many of you who've been involved in the field for, a New York minute will have had the pleasure of coming across John in the field. John commits us to excellence in everything that we do. And that's the standard you can hold us, you can hold me to, is excellence. He's very clear about that. Our mission being to support the development of the peer workforce through offering quality professional certifications. And this is the team. Our President, Adrienne Brown, and our Vice President, Crystal Montague, are out in the community. You may know either or both of them. And in-house at ASAP, Elizabeth Cranston is our Director of Certification. Her Program Associate is Kathy Gifford. Doug Rosenberry at Certifications Development has a storied history in ASAP, certainly. But prior to that, in Oasis, Doug has been involved with Oasis since before there was an Oasis. And Doug was very deeply involved in launching the CASAC credential, the clinical CASAC credential, which I know many of you in the field have found to be so helpful in developing your careers. And my role at ASAP and at the New York Certification Board, in addition to providing some subject matter expertise in the kinds of issues that we'll be talking about this afternoon, I'm the person that you can feel free to come to with any question whatsoever. A big question, a little question, a medium question. I have answers for everyone. And if I don't have answers for you, I know where to refer for answers. I am held to the standard of excellence, so I do not make stuff up. And that's a promise. But I will put my email in the chat box later this afternoon for you to follow up and contact me with whatever is on your minds. And there's the website for the New York Certification Board. There's our address. Pretty much everything I'm going to say about certification you'll find on our website. So I talked very briefly earlier about our mission. What is our mission? Our mission is, what is it all about? Our mission is recovery. And here's the vision of our pioneer, William White: to elevate recovery as the organizing fulcrum for the addictions field, to focus on strengths, not deficits, to build. And it's these words of William White that I invite us to take into not just our explorations this afternoon, but our work in the field generally. This is a mission that every one of us can share in, can take into our hearts and into our work. And our thanks to William White for phrasing it in his inimitable fashion. So we're not going to take a poll as such, but I would ask folks maybe to indicate in the chat box, and Theresa has promised me she'll keep an eye on the chat box, who's in the room. Are you a policymaker? Are you a program manager? Are you a peer supervisor? Are you a peer recovery professional yourself? Are you a trainer? Or do you fall into the ever popular category of other? So please feel free to just put your self-designation in the chat box, so Theresa can have a sense of who's in the room. And whoever is in the room, this session is, of course, approved for continuing education for peer recovery professionals. That's CARCs, like me, and CERPAs, like many of you. So, Theresa, can I ask you, do we have any responses here? Have we any sense of who's in the room?
Oh, yes, we have a number of supervisors and program directors. We have peer professionals, managers, a lot of peer professionals hanging out with us today. I'm really happy to see peer advocates, more managers, outreach SERPA, registered trainer, working coach, prevention person in the room. So there's a number of different folks with us today.
That's really great. So I think, Carrie, that you're kicking off exactly where you want to be, with a great mix of folks from the field, and a great mix of roles, and a great opportunity for all of us from all of these different roles to share experience and to share some conceptual frameworks, and to be together in this shared mission.
Some treatment court professionals, a project administrator, an MSW, lots of different folks. So we are right where we want to be. Great.
And there are continuing education credits for a number of you folks, including the peer recovery professionals. So we'll have some more information about that as we draw to the close of our time together this afternoon. So here's a couple of things that we might want to do with our time together. I love this curious face down here at the bottom right-hand corner with the question marks coming out of this yellow moon face. You know, what am I thinking about here? What am I considering here? So here's a few objectives for how we might usefully spend our time this afternoon. Remembering that my remarks will be coming to you from the perspective of the peer recovery profession, from the perspective of professional certifications. But I've already said that I like to start with considering the purpose and value of adding peer recovery to the continuum of care that you offer in your agencies and your services. We'll look very briefly at the positive outcomes identified by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration back in 2017. I expect you're going to look in more detail at that report. It's a really interesting, comprehensive summary of value. And the fact that it's 5 years old, sort of the experience has not changed the value of that data. We'll want to review the role and qualifications of peer recovery professionals. And I'm going to want to ask the question, what are the 3 characteristics that peer recovery professionals share with members of other professions? If we're stepping up to say that as peers, we are professionals too, what does that actually mean? I hope we can examine some strategies for the successful integration of peer recovery professionals into the formal service delivery environment, and look specifically at what are some of those Medicaid billable. Carrie mentioned this in her opening remarks, Medicaid billing, the Medicaid billing peer recovery role. What are some of those medical billable job tasks performed by peer recovery professionals? And that we have a little bit of time to revisit internal procedures for mentoring and management of peer recovery professionals, otherwise known as supervision. What are 3 guidelines you want to take away for successful supervision of peer recovery professionals? So I'm hoping, or it's my layout for this afternoon, that we will be looking at these questions and applying the framework of these objectives to the conversation. And I hope that these objectives lay out some exploratory territory that you would like to come with me this afternoon, and that will be useful for you moving forward in your work, whichever of those many, many roles are present in the room, as Theresa reported from the chat box. The value of peers was first articulated in the context of Medicaid billing back in 2007. Now it is possible that there's some folks on this call were barely born in 2007, which I say to give us a sense of a framework. The idea of peer recovery may be new to us, but that does not make it new. There's a history here, and I will be quoting some dates. I've already talked about how the New York Certification Board is 10 years old. Now we're hearing from an older authority even, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, said that peer recovery services are an evidence-based mental health model of care, which consists of a qualified peer support provider who assists individuals with their recovery from mental illness and substance use disorders. So again, Emily, in her sponsor message, talks about working with evidence-based modalities. And here we see that as far back as 2007, peers and the integration of peers into service provision was identified as an evidence-based practice. So far, so good. That SAMHSA survey from 10 years thereafter, from 2017, looked at the value of peers, examined in some detail the value of integrating peers into service provision from 2 perspectives. From the perspective of positive personal outcomes for the individuals, clients, participants working with peers, we're having this cluster of positive outcomes from these engagements. And, sort of it adds up to a very powerful argument in favor of integrating peers, that we should have these kinds of, this range of improvement in individual lives. But the SAMHSA report doesn't end there. The SAMHSA report analyzes positive outcomes for systems that have seen resources being used more effectively with the introduction of peers. Seeing systems which are clearly under a lot of pressure during times of unprecedented substance use disorder and a rampant opioid crisis. The alleviation of pressure on systems as identified by SAMHSA back in 2017. These are positive outcomes that policymakers and folks who have responsibilities at systems levels are going to be really captivated by as well. So this resource, I think, is a very significant one for all of us in the field. If you want to get into it in the weeds, we'll make sure that the report itself is available. It's fairly standard for presenters nationwide to refer to this report because of its breadth and depth. So I expect that you'll be hearing a lot more about it in the upcoming in this series. It's early in my presentation, but it's not early in our field to be thinking about next steps, taking a breath, and from whichever perspective you're coming from today, thinking in terms of these, this process, this developmental process for elevating our work, beginning with refocusing on value. Peers enhance the treatment industry-wide commitment to recovery, helping clients recognize and build their recovery capital. There's a lot of value that peers bring. Let's take a moment to refocus on that value. And maybe we want to reframe the purpose for integrating peers. Peers are engaged to deliver the evidence-based outcomes of this non-clinical role, not just to fulfill a third-party or legal mandate. And that's been a factor in our field, certainly since January 1, 2020, when the state agency mandated the integration of peers into certain programs. And the response to mandate, or the response to top down, isn't always immediately happy, shall we say. But if we refocus on value and reframe the purpose of integrating peers, we can turn the opportunity of a mandate or a third party or legal requirement into a real opportunity for building value, building positive outcomes. To do that, let's also think about reforming our process. Peers are professionals deserving the same clear job descriptions, hiring and onboarding protocols as every other employee. And in order to honor this, we're also going to maybe want to renew some of our internal practices. Peers are an integrated part of the agency team, requiring the same supportive supervision, management, and mentoring, the same standard as is applied throughout the agency. Now, depending on where you all are at in terms of the integration of peers into your workplace, or depending on your specific responsibility for programs in your workplace, you'll be in different places as far as this next steps layout goes. But wherever we're at, we might benefit at this moment in the development of peer recovery. We might benefit to step back, take a breath, and think about what we're doing in terms of these values, value of integration, the purpose of integration, the process of integrating peers, and the practice of employing peers. That said, then, let's ask ourselves the question, what is a peer? Dating back to the mid-70s, Professor Thomasina Borkman, who is the other redhead, God be with the days, the other redhead depicted on this slide, Professor Thomasina Borkman was captivated by the degree to which peer engagement in environments like 12-step groups were effective. Coming from an academic background, Professor Borkman was wondering, and she was doing this wondering in an academic institution at George Mason in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Professor Borkman was saying to herself, how is it that individuals who have no formal training, no academic qualifications, how is it that engaging peer-to-peer, or as you hear in the rooms, bozo to bozo, how is it that engagement, that non-clinical engagement is so effective? And Borkman came up with this idea that what peers bring to an engagement is two pieces. One is their experience, coming from a personal history of or exposure to as allies, substance use disorder, the process of change, and a sustainable life in recovery. I used to sleep rough under the railway bridge with a needle hanging out of my arm, but I engaged in a process of change, and I don't do that anymore. That's not where I live. Today, I have built reserves of recovery capital. My experience. Borkman suggests, again dating from the mid-70s, several people on this call weren't even born, that there was expertise required in translating that experience, applying that experience to the skill of helping others establish and live in their own definition and pathway of recovery across a lifetime. Not simply that acute intervention that we work with in our agencies, but establishing recovery across a lifetime, whatever that's going to look like for the individual. That expertise is going to involve knowledge, skills, and abilities, the knowledge, skills, and abilities of that helping role of peer. And that's where those two pieces, the experience piece and the expertise piece, come together. And this is what a peer recovery professional brings to your agency. This level of skill and a potential for efficacy. What's recovery? Well, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration defines recovery, and they did this again 11 years ago. Nothing new here. A process of change. We're still talking about change. A process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. And we're looking here again at the implication of what William White was saying earlier. Recovery is about strengths, being strengths-based and building on strengths and proceeding from strengths and focusing on strengths and leaving the deficits behind. So that definition was shepherded into being by the great Tom Hill, recently retired from the Office of National Drug, the National Drug Council Policy Office, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. Tom is, of course, a visual artist, and we're seeing him a lot more in galleries now than in recovery community meetings. But Tom made it his business to have the voice of people in recovery at the table that hammered out this definition of recovery that we can all use as the glue that unites as we move forward together in elevating recovery to the fulcrum. So those strengths, what is it that peer recovery professionals actually do? And effectively what we do in the short term, the long term, or whatever, in every engagement, is we help build recovery capital. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But our purpose in skillfully sharing our experience is about building recovery capital. Physical and human capital, cultural capital, community capital, family and social capital. Building a sustainable life in recovery. Whether we meet with an individual once, twice, 10 times, 50 times, the purpose is the same. We're supporting individuals building their recovery capital today. And recovery capital is going to look like, sort of all of these pieces: housing, employment, education, mental, spiritual, and emotional health, my teeth, financial management, all that. I can't get a credit card because my credit score is, sort of down somewhere in hell. Stigma reduction, living a life where I don't accept being stigmatized as a person in recovery, where I have visible and diverse role models, where I can be socially integrated, all of which is going to affect public policy, and the ever popular other, some heading that, sort of nobody's thought of yet, except you've just thought of it out of your experience, building your recovery capital. That's what we do. That's the purpose of peers. And in New York State, we do that in two professional roles recognized by ASAP and by the New York Certification Board. On the left is the recovery peer advocate role. And this is the Medicaid billed role in New York State, which Carrie is focusing on in her series that we're kicking off today. The Medicaid billable role did not originate with Medicaid. The Medicaid billable role was first defined by a national organization called the International Certification and Reciprocity Consortium. And I spoke earlier about our certifications development as expert, Doug Rosenberry. Doug served for some years in a senior voluntary capacity at ICEA and RC at the time leading up to the development of the peer recovery credential. And I have served as a subject matter expert with IC and RC writing questions for the IC&RC peer recovery exam. And of course, I'm sworn to 14,000 different kinds of secrecy as well. And John Coppola reminds me that I'm not allowed to take bribes either. But your certification team at the New York Certification Board is well connected with IC&RC from the days before it developed the peer recovery certification, which we know in New York State as CERPA. And the definition of that role is very clear. A peer recovery advocate provides outreach, advocacy, mentoring, and recovery support services to those seeking or sustaining recovery. Very simple statement of mission about our purpose, building recovery capital. So that dates from 2012. Again, neither today nor yesterday. This is an established profession. Medicaid really likes this role, really likes this IC&RC role. And in New York State, Oasis has very helpfully defined on its website a bullet-pointed list. It's reproduced here. A bullet-pointed list of the kinds of duties that are Medicaid billable when performed by somebody who holds a CERPA certification. Outreach with individuals, boosting individuals' engagement, connecting patients to community-based recovery supports. A very quick word about that. Recovery, Medicaid billing is tied to treatment plans. So you're part of transitioning, in a sense, the treatment plan into recovery by doing all of these Medicaid reimbursable tasks, offering non-clinical crisis support, educating program participants, accompanying clients to medical appointments. You very often see a job description looking for a clean driver's license, for example. Well, the reason for that is very simply, you're maybe going to be transporting individuals to medical appointments, during which time, of course, you can be having those great conversations that are supportive of building recovery capital. You'll be raising awareness of existing social and other support services. You'll be linking participants to formal recovery supports, and you may be assisting with applying for benefits. A very baseline recovery capital piece, benefits. Oh, you mean there are benefits and I'm entitled to them, and that will maybe help me build my financial capital. So that's the Medicaid billable role in New York State. Several of us are also coaches. I have a practice as a coach, for example, and I take my mission statement from the definition by the International Coaching Federation, dating back to 1997. Coaches partner with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires clients to maximize their personal and professional potential. Again, reiterating the SAMHSA definition of recovery, striving to reach our full potential. I think there's something about that even in the Constitution, isn't there? And those skills that peers learn to or develop, those communication skills, that expertise that peers practice in their training, are all those conversational skills, those coaching skills of asking good questions, listening from the heart, listening attentively, managing our own stuff, managing the conversation, staying with our client's goal. How can I help you with your recovery today? Well, whatever the answer to that question is, it's an opportunity. So that's how that piece plays out These are the two roles in which we might be supporting individuals, building recovery capital. One of them is Medicaid billable. It's that peer recovery, that recovery peer advocate role, that CRPA certification. And with all of that in place, we are introducing ourselves when we come to you looking for a job. We're introducing ourselves as peer recovery professionals. We've defined a peer, we've defined the recovery piece. What do you mean you're a professional? And this is where we get to think about what are the characteristics that define a professional. And there are three of them present in every profession. Every profession will have practice-specific training so that I know what I'm doing. And that will be based on the role. And it will be delivered, that training will be delivered by qualified trainers, members in New York State. They will be members of the ASAP NYCB Trainer Registry. Theresa Noor is a member of the ASAP NYCB Trainer Registry. I am myself, of course, and several of you on this call are too. Qualified trainers. And training, that training, role training, will be approved by whatever the credentialing board is that governs professional qualification, professional credentialing. So that the purpose of practice-specific training, what am I doing, is to assure performance in the role. Every profession has profession-specific ethics, a code of ethics that is developed by the profession itself. We talk often about medical ethics, for example. Medical ethics were developed by the profession. And for medical ethics to be relevant to you, you need to be a member of the medical profession. As a peer, peer ethics are going to be your professional code of ethical conduct, developed by the profession, not by outside parties. Your agency or your employer will, of course, have expectations of your behavior as an employee. But as a professional, you have your professional code of ethical conduct, which is implemented by the credentialing board, and it is binding on certificates. Ethical complaints are assessed by the relevant credentialing board, and there are consequences for breaking your profession's code of ethical conduct. So any profession, and the peer recovery profession is no different, any profession is going to be committed to its code of ethical conduct to assure accountability. And finally, every profession is going to have some level of credentialing, recognized credentialing by a third party, a disinterested third party. And in New York State, credentialing in the peer recovery profession is a certification. And it's role-specific certification. So there's a certification for the coach role, there's a certification for the advocate role. And you have to work for them. Certifications are awarded to candidates who demonstrate role competence per standards developed by the credentialing board. So anybody looking for a professional credential needs to become familiar with what are the standards, what do I need to be able to show, how do I show that I know what I'm doing here, that I qualify for credentialing. So these three pieces are present in the peer recovery profession. We're a profession. hi there, I'm a peer recovery professional, in exactly the way that we have laid it out here, talking about what is a peer, what is recovery, what is a profession. So these are the three characteristics of a profession: assured performance, assured accountability, and assured competence. Which brings us directly into thinking about a little deeper about the value of certification. It's tempting to think that a credential is a little bit like, in the old days, you needed to have something called a medallion in order to be allowed to drive a taxi and earn your living. Well, in our profession, it's tempting to think, oh, I gotta have a CERPA because I gotta get a job, I gotta earn a living. There's more to it than that. Your CERPA, your CARC, has a very great deal more value riding on it. And I want to introduce that value to you. The Institute for Credentialing Excellence, which is a national organization representing the credentialing industry. And I mean, who knew there is such a thing as a credentialing industry? New York Certification Board is a proud part of the national credentialing industry. And we operate to the highest standards of the credentialing industry. We're certifying peer recovery professionals, but our protocols are mainstream in the credentialing industry. Our Director of Certification, Elizabeth Cranston, is herself credentialed by the Institute for Credentialing Excellence. She is an ICE Academy credentialing specialist. She holds that certification. According to ICE, a high quality certification, the only kind you'll get from NYCB, a high quality certification validates an individual's knowledge, skills, and abilities. Knowledge, skills, and abilities in a defined profession, occupation, skill, or role. We've been defining these all afternoon. And allows employers and other stakeholders to identify individuals with the competencies needed to perform a role or task. So your certification is like a badge saying, sort of, I'm good for this. Here's your elevator speech. And this is true of any profession at all, and it's true of us. Certification confirms that I'm a competent and ethical professional with a transparent and accountable practice in the certified role. Well, what's not to like about that? I know what I'm doing in my professional role, whether I'm an advocate, whether I'm a coach. I'm committed to doing the right thing, no matter what. I'm open and upfront about what I'm doing in my professional practice. I can explain myself, and I can explain my ethical decision-making process and my professional actions and what I'm up to anybody. And I will accept any consequences. So your elevator speech here has a lot of teeth to it. Certification confirms that I'm a competent and ethical professional with a transparent and accountable practice in the certified role. And good for us. We are professionals. A number of certifications managed by, introduced by, developed by New York Certification Board at ASAP in our 10 years. The original is of course, the Certified Addiction Recovery Coach, introduced in 2012, 10 years ago. Our first certificates were rolled out on September 1, 2022. So we're celebrating. The Certified Recovery Peer Advocate, that ICNRC credential, so recognized by Medicaid, so promoted by Oasis. That Certified Recovery Peer Advocate certification was introduced in 2014. And the CRPA provisional was introduced in 2016. So these are the three foundational certifications. There are only two really. CRPA provisional is kind of like a junior, temporary, good for getting paid certification, but you really have to upgrade within 2 years, 24 months, or you're out. So the two foundational roles, as I described them earlier, the coach role and the advocate role, the CARC and the CRPA, there they are, dating back for the best part of 10 years, those two foundational roles. In 2019, we introduced what we call a parenthetic, or a specialty under CRPA, meaning that you have to have a full CRPA before you qualify for CRPA family, the CRPA F. That was introduced in 2019. And our VSR, which we developed over an 18-month period, soup to nuts, from early advocacy in the community by Malik Hutchinson, through engaging a professional psychometrician to develop the role delineation study, to validating that study in the community, to developing training to train individuals up in the role competencies of the role, to developing a certification, to launching the whole package to honor Veterans Day last year. The Veteran Supported Recovery certification is a specialty. You do need to have a baseline initial foundational certification, could be a CARC, could be a CRPA, could be any other recognized foundational certification, will get you into the room for a VSR certification. So over the years, as you can see, the interest in professional certification has grown tremendously in New York State. From that tiny beginning there in 2012, up through year to date, where we are now processing a minimum of 100 applications for professional certification in one or both or more of the peer recovery professional roles in New York State. This profession has arrived, it's growing, it's here to stay, and we are contributing, all of us, to building it out and building it better in our daily working lives. Spoke briefly earlier about the Oasis Mandate, effective January 2020, a sort of date that will kind of live in infamy as being a precursor month to COVID and all that's gone with COVID. But at that time, Oasis issued a directive to Oasis licensed outpatient programs, mandating the introduction of peer recovery professionals into those programs. That is to say, an individual holding a CRPA provisional, on the way to upgrading to full CRPA, or coming into the job already holding a full CRPA, and of course bound by the Professional Code of Ethics. So that is one reason for a real interest in peer recovery out in the treatment field. One reason for paying attention to the value of the role and what peers bring. But I hope that by following on this adventure with me today, we're thinking a little bit bigger than mandates. We're thinking about the value of integrating peers just for themselves. And we're thinking about the particular qualities, the personal and professional qualities that peers bring to our agencies and our programs and our services. In these environments, certainly, but also in a range of other workplace settings, this being an incomplete list compiled by the Department of Labour. And again, this is material that's, that's often quoted out in the field. It's very likely that you'll come back to this material later in the series. And I'm just introducing it here in the context of how these workplace settings are all part of the peer recovery profession and opportunities for peer recovery professionals. So taking a moment, one of these chat box polls, Theresa, if you would be so kind to throw your eye out here for me. We've a mixed number we've mixed folks in the room. You're coming from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different roles, different stakeholders. We have a range of stakeholders in the room. I know that's what Carrie was hoping for. It's what we're hoping for as the series continues over coming weeks. You're going to be one of these people, somebody for whom working with peer recovery professionals is all new to me. And all this stuff you're talking about, Ruth, I never heard any of it before, goodness. And if that's you, I hope you're getting value from the territory that I'm laying out here. Many of us on this Zoom will, I think, already have at least some experience of working with peer recovery professionals. And those of you who do, I hear mostly from you that you love your peers. Maybe a little bit skeptical at the beginning, but once, once peers show their value, we love you. But of course, there's also the other side of that. Some of you may have the experience of peers that, it's a hassle. It's a hassle. Man, is it a hassle. Those peers are just not employment ready. And I don't care how rosy a gloss you put on it, Ruth, with all this talk of professionalism, but these peers are just not employment ready. Maybe that's your experience. Put it in the chat box. Maybe your experience is that having peers has helped a lot. Maybe the overwhelming question for you, never mind any of the rest of this, maybe the overwhelming question for you is, how do I supervise peers? That's my job. I'm a supervisor. I have to make these programs work. How do I supervise peers? And if that's your top line question, so we'll spend a little bit of time laying out some of that too, so that again, these are themes that can be picked up later in this series as we move through Carrie's program. Anything in the chat box there, Theresa, that might be useful to hear at this point?
Yep, I'll start reading. So keep coming in. So peers, let's see, are love when the team knows your worth and role. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes.
I have a helped. Stacy says the peers have helped. Absolutely. I'm really interested as well to see, because we have a lot of folks who are peers on the call, but the folks that are not, that are here from other industries. What's your experience? What's your take? Is this all new to you? I have zero experience right now, or maybe just a little bit, or maybe we have that perception that this is going to be a pain in the butt. It's going to be a hassle. And if that's where you are, that's where you are. We just need to know how we can help you. So if other folks on the call would chime in and throw stuff in the chat, we would appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much, Theresa, and thanks everybody.
Definitely seeing stuff about supervision being, you know, an issue that we need more guidance in supervising peers.
We can help with that.
Yes, I can put in a plug for our peer professional supervision training, and there's a peer supervisors learning collaborative that For New York runs. So there are resources out there for that. I will certainly put some of that in the chat as well.
So thank you, Theresa. Whatever stakeholder perspective you're coming from, we're going to have different missions. If you're an executive in your agency, your mission is to develop and oversee policies, programs, and protocols. And we must respect that from our other perspectives. You're going to be concerned about what service gaps, how am I going to define the job? What was Oasis thinking with this mandate? If I'm a supervisor, my mission is to manage day-to-day operations, programs, and personnel. What knowledge, skills, and abilities do I need in a peer to make that happen? How do I inspire that performance that my agency needs? And do I really need this extra hassle? Let's be honest, folks. These questions are out there. And if I'm the peer recovery professional myself, my mission, again, is to simply to be the best employee I can be in the assigned non-clinical role. It's my mission to be competent, ethical, and accountable. So who's going to help me with that? And is this job the right fit for me? What about my career goals and my future? So there's a lot of different perspectives, different needs, different questions in the conversation about peers, different missions, different challenges. And we need to honor and respect and grapple with the fact that whatever our shared understanding of mission and role, we're also going to want to expand our conversation that we understand stakeholder missions as well. And here is a checklist from the Department of Labor on organizational characteristics indicating readiness to hire peers. Very, very comprehensive. Something that really I think is going to need to be on every one of our desks. And we will link you to that resource so that you can spend quality time considering these issues from whichever perspective you're coming from, that of an agency executive, and that of a supervisor, and that of a peer. You know, is this agency ready for me? Is this agency ready to hire me? That's one of the questions that's out there.
Ms. Ruth, there's a question in the chat that I think you just spoke to. How can we add a peer program to our services? So that readiness speech, you know, that's certainly the first step is your organization ready to add the peers? But
and thank you, Theresa. And I would suggest that even before we ask the how question, we ask the why question. Why do I want to integrate peers? What is their value to me? What is the purpose? What are the outcomes I'm looking for? How is that going to fit with my organization's culture and my organization's mission? We're not talking here about integrating peers for the sake of integrating peers. We're talking about integrating peers because peers bring value. So that's that first step for preparing for recruitment, preparing for hiring, undertaking your prep for integration, answering those 5 W's, starting with why. Why do I want to do this? And you're going to want a values-based answer to that. Prior to hiring, you're going to want to engage existing staff in internal conversations regarding the impact of integrating a brand new role. Not everything is foreseeable, but if we have the internal conversation, we'll all be readying for implementation. And that's a very important conversation to diffuse confusion, fear, and resentment ahead of time. We may think we need to make additions to Agency Code of Staff Conduct now. Do it now. Close the barn door before the horse has bolted. Clarify agency policies regarding substance use disorder medical crises among staff. People talk about, oh, what if the peer relapses? What if the peer returns to use? What if the peer? What if anybody in the staff cohort may have a substance use disorder challenge? What are the policies that your agency or your program has in place to support your staff? Develop a needs-based job description for the new role. Simply going to, an ASAP or an Oasis definition of what is a peer, that's not a job description. What is the peer going to do for you? That's a job description. How is the peer going to be engaged in such a way as to produce value for you? That's the question. That's how you get a job description. And this is something you'll probably do with your human resources department, if you have an HR department. But HR can't go MIA on this. HR is directly involved in any strategic development of the staff cohort, including the implementation of new roles. Whatever you're doing with a new role or with a peer, standard HR procedures for recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and onboarding new staff should be in place. You hire the peer you want, not the first peer who shows up. You hire the peer you want. Just as you hire for any other role, you hire the person you want. And here's one of your candidates suiting up here. Does anybody wear shirts and ties anymore professionally? Anyway, here's this poor character. He wants to put his best foot forward, and he's got some tips here for himself, what he's going to do to put his best foot forward and to convince you that he's the peer for the job. Because this is what's sitting on the other side of the desk from you when you're interviewing. These great folks, hello, I'm a peer recovery professional. Everyone you're interviewing, and you're going to be hiring the person you want, and you're going to be onboarding the person you want in the same way that you would any other staff member. And you're going to be supervising with a view to the same care of the peer as you take of any other staff member. And that's what we mean by supportive supervision. Again, I'm sure that you'll be going into a lot greater detail of this later in the series. A supportive supervisor is going to be a manager, making sure that the program is functioning as it should be, helping teams understand agency expectations, performance goals, and appropriate conduct, scheduling work hours, all that program stuff, all that management stuff, identifying and resolving workplace problems, assisting in hiring and firing, and being the senior day-to-day voice of senior manager. Oh my goodness. My supervisor has a lot of management to do. And here we are expecting that this agency will offer a supportive supervision model incorporating the mentor role of ensuring that staff is prepared and trained for job duties, providing constructive feedback on performance, proposing continuing education opportunities, being available to process individual challenges as they arise, assisting in resolving emergencies and other crises. The expectation is that you are supervising all of your staff in this joint manager-mentor role. And if not, why not? And when? With regard to the specifics of supervision of peer recovery professionals, we have just published this guide for you folks. This is a guide to role competencies for peer supervisors and program managers. And it is specifically designed to offer practical suggestions for how you can help peers be the very best possible part of your program. How you can take that training that they've got and build their on-the-job role experience with to the standards of the role and with your preferred outcomes in mind. This document is available for you to download from our website. We particularly recommend it for supervisors who are supervising peer professionals who are in the provisional certification stage, who are looking to upgrade by building 500 hours role experience in the field. This is a guide for you if you're a supervisor. If you're building that experience as a CERPA provisional, or if you're already full CERPA, you're going to want to look at this guide as a way of understanding how you can support your supervisor to better support you, so that you're in a mutual conversation. And finally, let's look at some retention strategies that you folks might want to look at in your agencies and programs. Instead of thinking about peer remuneration as only linked to Medicaid billing scales, how about we start thinking about how do we remunerate, how do we pay peers on the basis of the very real value that they bring to us? Let's do some comprehensive onboarding so we don't leave any of our staff hanging out to dry on day one. Let's offer that supportive supervision. Let's support continuing education opportunities. Let's give feedback suggesting, sort of where further training might be helpful. Let's think about expanding our employee assistance programs. Sort of, are we really meeting the needs of all of our employees? And let's affirm role value and contribution to the workforce. People really do work better when we think we're giving you what you want and you need, and you're telling us. So these are some retention strategies to be thinking about even before you onboard any new staff. So some reflections to wrap all of this up this afternoon, some reflections. These evidence-based outcomes that SAMHSA points at, do I really think that integrating peers will deliver those evidence-based outcomes in my agency? Or am I already demonstrating that they do work? Yes, I am getting this value. Can I trust that certified peers really are competent and ethical? I hear this question a lot, particularly from supervisors. We know now that peers must have formal training, adhere to a profession-wide code of ethical conduct. So what is my role as a supervisor in helping to elevate their standards of performance in their role? That's where the supervision guide I referred to a minute ago comes in. What is my role in ensuring success in integrating peer recovery professionals in my organization? And again, that comes back to, why am I integrating peers? How am I integrating peers? And how am I nurturing them now that I've brought them on board? These are important questions for me to sit back and think about, and here's why our thinker has reappeared on this slide. So that's what I've got for you formally this afternoon as an introduction to this series that Carrie has set out for us. Naturally, I've focused on the work of the certification piece, the professional piece, because that's where ASAP New York Certification Board as a stakeholder, that's what we bring. But these were the objectives that we set for ourselves at the beginning of this session. 3 positive outcomes identified by SAMHSA. Might need to look at the resource, but I already know that there are positive personal outcomes and positive systems outcomes across a whole range of recovery capital measures. What are 3 characteristics peer recovery professionals share with members of other professionals? That's very straightforward. Training, ethics, certification. And what are 3 guidelines for successful supervision of peer recovery professionals? That supportive supervision piece. I want to be both a mentor and a manager. I got to be a manager. I know how to do that. Am I being a mentor? And bringing the 2 pieces together, that's how I will help support success in my workforce. Follow-up information, resources, get hold of me. These are all your points of contact. The homepage of the New York Certification Board, and my invitation to sign up for our e-newsletter. I just published one this morning. There is a screen capture on the right-hand side of the screen. Always stories that are immediately and directly pertinent to the peer recovery profession. And I never repeat stories from somewhere else. You only get original material here. If you absolutely need a masterclass in professional certification, up there at the top of the screen, you see Elizabeth and I delivered a Learning Thursdays for Oasis, all about that. You'll find that on the Oasis Learning Thursdays website, and my email for follow-up questions. And finally, a final message from our sponsor. This is the scan for the evaluation. This is a URL for reaching the evaluation form. Emily was very clear that she wanted us to, that she wanted all of us to click through to this. So that's what I got for you folks today. We have a little bit of time, Theresa, if there was something very particular that you thought I, more than any of the other upcoming speakers, might be placed to respond to.
Thank you, Ruth. That was phenomenal as always. I bow to you as master trainer again and again. Thank you. Very informative. I did just want to scroll back in the chat. I think that you answered every question that was in there, and certainly the upcoming speakers will address more of this. You know, in terms of how do we start and the why do we start, and you know, just evaluating where we are in the process. I would just like to add from my perspective, just to add to your retention piece, because I shamelessly will plug some for New York events coming up, wellness of your staff is one of the most important pieces in making sure that everyone is healthy and happy. And that's from the top down to the bottom up. It's not just peers. So we have developed a training that's coming up in December for wellness for peer professionals, clinicians, and families. And also continuing education. So since I'm the director of recovery education and training, I have to put in a plug for ongoing training, but also the New York State Recovery Conference that's coming up in October. It's not only a way to get continuing education for peer professionals, but it's a way to engage with a community, a larger community. And so whether you are an administrator, peer, yeah, go ahead.
No, I just want to be very careful when we're talking about training and education for continuing education. If you are a peer recovery professional, only approved trainings that are listed on our website will be accepted for continuing education. So let's be very clear about that. Knowledge is no burden, as my ex used to say. And all of the trainings that Theresa hosts are first class, and they're all approved for continuing education credits. But let's make no assumptions. Peer recovery training must be approved by the New York Certification Board, must appear on our lists of approved trainings, or it will not be accepted for continuing education for CARC and CERPA.
I'm just going to jump in here because unfortunately we have reached the end of our time allotted for this afternoon. Ruth, thank you so much. Even for myself, there have been so many different ideas and questions and next steps that have been popping up in my head. I'm excited to connect with all of you that have attended today in the chat. We will be addressing all of your questions that are in the chat, but we'll also be sending out a bunch of materials, tools, connections within the recovery community and at the recovery community centers that are available, so that you don't feel like we've given you all this information, but what's our next step for our own personal, whether it's our own personal pursuit of becoming a CERPA, or in our role as a peer, or as an organization onboarding a peer. And we hope that you will attend the other presentations in the series, and that you will feel free to reach out to myself or any of us within the chat with further questions, concerns, or potential adaptability for this incredible workforce. So thank you all again for your time this afternoon, and I hope to hear from you soon, and I look forward to virtually seeing you again.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
What's it all about?
Recovery.
What's it all about? Recovery.
Right. A lot of folks know that battle call, so